Welcome to The Timeless Mind, your ultimate source for bite-sized wisdom from the most powerful books ever written. If you've ever wanted to absorb life-changing lessons from classic books without spending hours reading, you're in the right place.
Absolutely.
This is Series 1, Episode 9, The Wealth Mindset. Lessons from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Let's dive in.
Okay, so for this deep dive, you wanted to unpack Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
It's a classic for a reason. It really flips the script on how we think about money.
It's been a bestseller for over 2 decades.
It really has. It's almost like having those two contrasting voices in your head, right? One pushing for the traditional job security route, the other urging you to think bigger, to build wealth.
We've got excerpts from the book,
We do.
even some of Kiyosaki's reflections 20 years after he first wrote it.
Yeah, he had a lot to say looking back. What jumped out at me was how relevant it still feels today.
So,
Feeling of wanting something, but thinking, I can't afford it. His rich dad actually forbade that phrase.
yeah.
Instead, he insisted on asking, how can I afford it? What do you make of that?
It's fascinating, right? It's not about magically manifesting money,
Right.
but about shifting your mindset.
Okay.
It's about training your brain to look for solutions instead of getting stuck in a rut of limitations.
So it's about getting creative, thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that story in the book where Kiyosaki's rich dad buys that rundown property everyone else dismissed. He saw the potential, figured out a way to make it work.
Exactly. He didn't let the initial lack of funds stop him. He used that how question as fuel to find a creative solution. It's a powerful lesson for anyone, whether you're looking to buy property or start a business.
It challenges that common belief that you need a ton of money to start making money.
Yeah.
It's more about having the right mindset, the right approach. Okay, so that's one big mind shift Kiyosaki throws at us right off the bat. What else struck you as we were prepping for this?
Well, he really throws a wrench into the whole a house is an asset idea that so many of us have been taught.
Ooh, yeah.
He argues that if it's draining your bank account every month
Yeah.
with mortgage payments, taxes, upkeep, is it really an asset?
Right. He flips the script and calls those liabilities disguised as assets. He even suggests that the real estate crash back in 2007 was fueled by the rich creating these complex financial products. Things like derivatives, which ultimately backfired on everyone else. Do you think he's being a bit dramatic there, or is there truth to that?
I think there's some truth to it. Remember how he describes those derivatives?
Oh, yeah?
Essentially bets on other bets,
Yeah.
creating this whole house of cards that was bound to collapse.
Right.
And he argues that while the rich often use these complex financial instruments to their advantage,
Yeah.
it's the average person who ends up footing the bill when things go south.
That's a sobering thought. So if we're not supposed to just bank on our homes as our ticket to wealth, what does Kiyosaki propose as an alternative?
This is where that core principle comes in. The poor and middle class work for money, but the rich have money work for them. He's all about building assets, things that put money in your pocket rather than liabilities that drain it.
But isn't it a bit of a chicken and egg situation? Don't you need money to start building those income-generating assets in the first place?
That's where the real challenge lies and where his rich dad philosophy comes in. He doesn't just say, go buy a bunch of rental properties. He talks about financial literacy, understanding how money works, being savvy about taxes, building businesses.
And that's a point that resonates with me, even if some of his other ideas feel a bit out there.
Yeah.
Financial literacy is so crucial, regardless of your income level. It's about empowering yourself to make smart decisions with your money.
Absolutely. And he doesn't just throw around vague concepts. He breaks down financial intelligence into 4 key areas: accounting, investing, understanding markets, and the law.
It's a framework.
He even compares it to the story of the 2 contractors who win a bid to supply water to a village. One starts hauling buckets.
Oh, I remember that one.
The other builds a pipeline.
That's such a great analogy. It highlights the difference between trading your time for money versus building a system that generates income even when you're not actively working.
Right.
It's about creating that financial pipeline, right?
Precisely. And he doesn't sugarcoat it.
No?
He says most people never win because they're more afraid of losing. But his rich dad believed that failure was part of the process, an opportunity to learn and grow.
So it's about embracing that entrepreneurial spirit, being willing to take calculated risks and learning from those inevitable stumbles along the way.
Exactly. It's about shifting your perspective from seeing failure as a dead end to seeing it as valuable feedback. And speaking of challenging conventional wisdom, remember how he talks about taxes? He actually has his rich dad call Robin Hood a crook.
Now, that's a bold statement.
Yeah.
But what's the reasoning there? Isn't Robin Hood the classic hero who fights for the underdog?
He uses that example to illustrate how the rich don't just work harder, they work smarter. They understand the tax code. They use corporations to their advantage. All perfectly legally, of course.
So it's not about evading taxes, it's about playing by the rules of the game, but doing so in a way that maximizes your financial advantage. He encourages us to question those ingrained beliefs that might be holding us back. Like, why do we automatically assume the rich are greedy or that taxes are inherently bad?
Right. He really pushes us to examine those assumptions. And this leads us to one of his central points, the idea of escaping the rat race. He illustrates this with the story of a young couple
I remember that one.
who, as they earn more, get trapped in a cycle of increased expenses and taxes.
Yeah.
They're on that treadmill constantly chasing the next paycheck.
And they think they're successful because they have the bigger house,
Right.
the fancy car. But are they truly free?
That's the question he forces us to ask. Are those outward symbols of success actually masking a deeper sense of financial insecurity?
He argues that true wealth isn't about how much you earn, but about how much you keep and how hard your money is working for you.
Exactly. And he's a big advocate for constantly learning new skills, being adaptable, having multiple streams of income. He even uses McDonald's as an example. It's not just about selling burgers. It's a system, a well-oiled machine for generating wealth.
He's pushing us to think like entrepreneurs, even if we're not running our own businesses. It's about building those systems in our own lives, right? Whether it's investing in rental properties, creating passive income streams online, or whatever resonates with us.
Absolutely. And speaking of entrepreneurship, remember that journalist he met in Singapore who wanted to be a best-selling author, but scoffed at the idea of learning how to sell?
Ouch, pride before the fall. What was the lesson there?
It doesn't matter how great your product or service is if you don't know how to market it, how to reach your audience. And these are skills that can be learned, no matter what your profession is.
He emphasizes the importance of communication, persuasion, and the ability to connect with people. It makes me think that Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't just about finances.
Yeah.
It's also about personal development and those soft skills that can make or break any endeavor.
That's a great observation. He's weaving together those different aspects of success, both internal and external.
And it all circles back to that initial idea of financial literacy. If you understand how money works, you can start to make it work for you.
Yeah.
Whether you're building a business, investing in real estate, or creating passive income streams.
He's not just giving us a roadmap, he's giving us a whole new way of looking at the world, a new lens through which to view our financial possibilities.
So what resonates most with you from all this? What's the big takeaway so far?
For me, it's that shift in mindset. It's about moving from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance. From feeling like a victim of circumstance to becoming the architect of your own financial destiny.
And that's a journey that anyone can embark on, regardless of their starting point. It's about challenging those limiting beliefs, embracing the power of learning, and taking consistent action. It's not always easy, but as Kiyosaki reminds us, action always beats inaction.
He's definitely a proponent of diving in head first.
Yeah.
And even if some of his ideas are controversial, he forces us to think differently about money, about wealth, and about our own potential.
It's a call to awaken our inner entrepreneur, even if that entrepreneur is simply managing our own finances more effectively. And that's a powerful message, isn't it?
It is. He's giving us the tools, the knowledge and the inspiration to take control of our financial lives and start building that path to freedom and abundance.
So for all of you listening, are you ready to take that first step? Are you ready to challenge your own assumptions about money and start creating the life you truly desire? All right, so we've covered a lot of ground already. Mindsets, assets, even Robin Hood as a tax evader, according to Kiyosaki.
Right.
But before we jump into more of his advice, I'm curious, how does Rich Dad, Poor Dad actually define wealth? Is it just about having a fat bank account?
He actually uses a definition from Buckminster Fuller, that futurist guy.
Oh, yeah.
Fuller said wealth is how long you could survive if you stopped working today. So it's less about a specific dollar amount, more about having that cushion, that freedom to make choices without constantly worrying about money.
So even if you're not rolling in dough, you could still be considered wealthy by that definition if your lifestyle is covered, your needs are met.
Exactly. And Kiyosaki builds on that. He talks about wealth as the measure of cash flow from your assets compared to your expenses.
Mhm.
If those assets are generating enough to cover your bills, you're in a good spot.
Which ties back to that whole idea of having money work for you.
Yes.
It's not just about saving, it's about putting your money to work, generating more money.
And that's where the snowball effect comes in, right?
Oh, yeah.
As your assets grow, so does your cash flow, giving you even more resources to invest. He uses this example of buying a small condo,
Okay.
then using the rental income to buy another, and so on.
So it's about building that momentum over time, kind of like compounding interest, but on a larger scale. But I have to admit, this all sounds great in theory. Putting it into practice can be daunting. Rich Dad, Poor Dad has a lot of focus on that inner game too, right?
Right.
Like mastering your emotions and beliefs when it comes to money.
Oh, absolutely. And he's very upfront about the fear and self-doubt that holds people back,
Hmm.
especially the fear of failure. Most of us are conditioned to avoid it at all costs, but his rich dad had a totally different perspective.
He actually encouraged making mistakes.
Uh-huh.
That goes against everything I was taught growing up.
Right. But he saw failure as part of the learning process. He even said winning means being unafraid to lose. It's like learning to ride a bike.
Okay.
You're going to fall a few times before you get the hang of it.
So it's about reframing those financial stumbles, seeing them not as setbacks, but as opportunities to learn and course correct.
Exactly. He challenges us to be less afraid of losing and more focused on the lessons we can gain from those experiences.
Okay, so we've got to be bold and embrace those potential bumps in the road.
Mm-hmm.
But are there other inner game traps Kiyosaki warns about?
He talks about arrogance being a sneaky one. Not the loud, show-off kind, but the kind that masks ignorance.
So instead of admitting they don't know something, they try to bluff their way through it.
Yeah.
That can't end well when you're dealing with money.
Right. And his rich dad always stressed the importance of acknowledging what you don't know and then seeking out the knowledge you need to make informed decisions.
So it's about having that beginner's mindset, being curious, asking questions, and not being afraid to say, I need help, or I don't understand this yet.
Exactly. It's about surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you in certain areas.
Okay, so humility and a willingness to learn are key. What other wisdom nuggets does Kiyosaki offer?
Mm.
What about this idea of paying yourself first?
That's a core principle he emphasizes throughout the book. Instead of waiting until all the bills are paid to save what's left over, he says, pay yourself first. Set aside a portion of your income for savings and investments right off the bat.
But what if you're barely making ends meet? It seems counterintuitive to prioritize savings when you have bills piling up.
I know, it feels risky, right?
Yeah.
But he argues that it forces you to get creative,
Yeah.
to find ways to make more money or manage your expenses more effectively.
It's about breaking that cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, always hoping that someday you'll have enough to save.
Exactly. And even when you're short on cash,
Yeah.
he says, resist the temptation to dip into those savings or investments.
Wait, so even if you're facing a financial crunch, stick to paying yourself first. That's hardcore.
It is, but he believed it strengthens your financial muscles and reinforces that belief in your ability to create wealth.
It's about shifting your priorities, building those habits, and making your financial future non-negotiable. I'm starting to see how all these principles, as simple as they seem, can really create a ripple effect in your life.
They do, and they build on each other.
So what else does he suggest we do to nurture our financial genius, start down that path to wealth?
He talks about the importance of finding mentors,
Okay.
people who have already achieved what you aspire to.
Like his rich dad.
Right.
Someone who can guide you, challenge you, and share their wisdom and experience.
Exactly. He emphasizes learning from their successes and their mistakes and tapping into their network of contacts. It's about finding those people who inspire you to think bigger and bolder.
So it's about surrounding yourself with people who can help you see possibilities you might not have considered before.
Right. And another interesting concept he brings up is the idea of being an Indian giver.
Isn't that a bit of a loaded term? I thought it had negative connotations.
He uses it to highlight a cultural misunderstanding. You see, when the first European settlers arrived in America, they often mistook the Native American practice of sharing resources as a gift
Okay.
rather than a loan.
And were offended when they asked for those resources back.
Exactly. But from the Native American perspective, it was about reciprocity, about a temporary exchange of resources for mutual benefit.
So how does this relate to building wealth?
Kiyosaki argues that we should adopt a similar mindset with money. Instead of hoarding it, be willing to circulate it, to invest it in opportunities that can generate a return.
So it's about seeing money as a tool to be used, not something to be feared or worshipped.
Mm,
Invest it, make it work for you, and then get it back, ideally with a profit.
you got it. He also encourages us to choose our heroes wisely, to find those role models in the financial world who inspire us, like his rich dad. He would often imagine himself in his rich dad's shoes, making decisions as if he were already a successful investor.
It's a powerful visualization technique,
Uh-huh.
and it reinforces that belief in your ability to achieve those same levels of success. He's basically saying, if they can do it, why not you?
Right.
It's about surrounding yourself with that energy, that mindset.
Yeah.
So it's about modeling yourself after those who have already achieved what you desire, almost like a mental rehearsal for success. I like it. Any other advice that might seem a bit unorthodox?
He's a big proponent of taking action, even if it feels uncomfortable or risky.
Uh-huh.
He says, and I quote, "Action always beats inaction."
Words to live by. But where do we even begin? It can feel overwhelming when you're first starting out.
He offers a ton of practical tips, but one of the simplest and most powerful is to stop doing what isn't working.
Take a step back, look at your current situation,
Right.
and identify any habits or patterns that might be holding you back, whether it's overspending, staying in a dead-end job, or whatever it might be.
Exactly. It's about being honest with yourself and being willing to make changes, even if they're uncomfortable at first.
That's a great starting point. What else? What about finding those golden opportunities? Where did those come from?
He recommends actively looking for new ideas, exploring books on subjects you know nothing about. He calls these books formulas.
Formulas for success, like those get-rich-quick schemes you see advertised online?
Not quite. He's talking about expanding your knowledge base,
Okay.
finding inspiration in unexpected places. He also suggests taking classes, attending seminars, and networking with people who are doing interesting things in the financial world.
So it's about constantly learning, experimenting, and refining your approach, just like any entrepreneur would do. But what about actually putting all this into practice? Any tips for taking action in the real world?
He's a big believer in making lots of offers.
Offers on what?
Anything that aligns with your financial goals.
Mm.
Real estate, businesses, even investment opportunities. He argues that most sellers tend to ask for more than something is worth.
So it's all about negotiation.
Exactly. And you never know what kind of deal you might be able to strike until you put yourself out there.
But isn't that a bit risky? What if you make a bad offer and offend the seller?
He actually recommends offering half of what the seller is asking.
Half. Isn't that a bit lowballing it?
It might seem that way,
Yeah.
but he says you can always negotiate up. The key is to start the conversation.
Wow, that's bold. I admire his confidence. Any other tips for finding those hidden gems, those golden opportunities?
He recommends looking in unexpected places. For example, he once bought a condo for half the price his neighbor paid, simply because he shopped at a foreclosure auction, while his neighbor went through a traditional real estate agent.
So it's about getting creative with your approach and not being afraid to explore unconventional avenues. It's about thinking outside the box and finding those diamonds in the rough that others might overlook.
Exactly. And it all circles back to that core principle of action. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't take action, it's all for nothing.
So true. Okay, so we've got our action plan. Stop doing what isn't working, look for new ideas, make lots of offers, and explore unconventional avenues. Feeling inspired yet?
Definitely. And remember, this is just a taste of what Rich Dad, Poor Dad has to offer. There's so much more to explore.
Right.
So many more nuggets of wisdom to uncover.
And we encourage you to keep digging, keep questioning, keep learning.
Yes.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, from shifting mindsets to building assets, and even some unconventional advice like becoming an Indian giver with your money. But as we wrap up, I'm curious what really stuck with you from Kiyosaki's message.
You know, one thing that resonated with me was his observation about how even intelligent people can limit their financial success by clinging to outdated beliefs. He challenges us to really examine those ingrained ideas that might be holding us back.
Like the belief that you need a ton of money to start investing, or that financial success is only for a select few.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He reminds us that money is just a tool, an idea. It's how you use that tool that determines your success. And he emphasizes that every self-made millionaire started small. With an idea, they nurtured and grew into something significant.
It's like planting a seed, right? With the right care and attention, even the smallest seed can grow into a mighty tree.
Exactly. And he encourages us to start investing in our financial education, to expand our knowledge and skills. He says, and I quote, "Buy a book, go to a seminar, practice, start small." It's about giving ourselves the tools we need to succeed.
So it's about committing to that journey of learning and growth, even if it's just one step at a time. But what about those of us who didn't have a rich dad to guide us? Is it too late to start?
He stresses that it's never too late to learn and grow, that financial education is accessible to anyone who's willing to seek it out. It's about taking ownership of your financial future, no matter your starting point.
So what's the key message Kiyosaki wants us to leave with? What's the ultimate goal?
He wants us to shift our focus from working hard for money to having money work hard for us. It's about becoming the masters of our financial destiny rather than slaves to the paycheck.
It's about playing the game smarter, using our financial intelligence to create a life of freedom and abundance.
Exactly. He's not promising any get-rich-quick schemes. It's about changing your mindset, building your knowledge, and taking consistent action.
So are you ready to take that first step? Are you ready to awaken your financial genius and start creating the life you truly desire?
We hope this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad has given you the knowledge and the inspiration to do just that.
Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep building your own path to financial freedom.
Until next time, keep those minds timeless.